Sorry. Good evening. I'd like to call the October 14th meeting of the Mount Vernon Board of Education to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Trustee Farron. Trustee Jaros.
Here.
Trustee McDowell. Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Saunders.
Here.
Trustee White.
Present.
Trustee Nying. Trustee McOwen.
Present.
Trustee Zamore.
Present.
Quorum is present. There's no need to go into executive session this evening. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that going-
I still don't have any emails.
You don't have your emails with you?
Yeah, they're not here. It's still there.
I swear it was working when I gave it back because I checked.
I think it has a virus.
Okay, like to accept the minutes from the September 9th meeting.
Motion.
Trustee Miller.
Second.
Trustee Jaros. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Motion to accept the minutes from the September 30th meeting.
Motion.
Trustee Jaros.
Second.
Trustee McOwen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
Motion to accept the minutes from the October 6th meeting.
Motion.
Trustee Zamore.
That was McDowell, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard it.
But I'll second.
Trustee McDowell and Trustee Zamore. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, right now we'll take communications from the public.
Our first speaker, good evening, everybody. The board is going to accept comments from the public this evening. Please be reminded that you have 3 minutes to make your comments at the microphone. Please state your name. And our first speaker is Bishop C. Nathan Edwards.
Good evening, members of the Board of Trustees, the Superintendent, those who are present tonight. I'm Dr. C. Nathan Edwards, also known as Bishop Edwards, a longtime resident, local pastor, community activist, and current president of United Black Clergy of Westchester. Several of my colleagues and parents and senators are concerned about the lack of or misinformation circulating in our community regarding the direction of this board. This concern is born out of the new face on an old evil known as segregation, or the new genre, education inequity. Mount Vernon cannot afford to return to the tales of two cities. Over the past 26 years, as a pastor in this community, we had to fight against unequal distribution of resources distributed to the south side versus the north side. We are one community with problems that affect all of our children regardless of locality. This is reflected in the past 7 years of low test scores. Some of the most needed schools are those that we feel that not being considered. Some of the most needed schools are forgotten. K-8 perhaps is a great idea, but what about pre-K through second grade. The external assessment tests administered by the state suggest that we are failing our children in early stages of their development. The ultimate goal of this board should be preparing our children to become lifelong learners, equipping them to be college and career ready. I challenge this board not to become short-sighted and not focus on the total picture. Education inequality is becoming the norm in urban settings. This is happening because of the reverse flight of those of high economic level looking to be closer to the action and affordable housing costs. We applaud people of means buying into our community, but their local schools shouldn't be granted any leverage because they have money and status. All of our schools must be treated with the same level of investment from this board, the same level, with no special treatment, the same level. Education equality for all our children is what Mount Vernon need and want. As the superintendent offers the vision for our school district, we will support him as long as education and curriculum development remain his focus. He has been chosen as our educational leader, and I ask that this board allow him to lead in education. The makeup of this board is diverse and accomplished to your credit, but please, you have hired a well-accomplished team leader
Okay,
and let him lead.
thank you,
Finally, United Black Clergy
thank you.
have invested interest in our children's success. We don't want to return to public protests, disrupting meetings, marching on the educational center, doing what's necessary to
Bishop
vote you
Edwards,
out
Bishop-
just to ensure that our
Bishop
children are
Edwards,
treated fairly.
Bishop
We
Edwards, can
come
you
in
stop,
peace,
please?
but please
Bishop
don't allow
Edwards.
our peace to be confused. Our churches are organized and is organizing, and we will fight for our most precious gift,
Thank you very
our
much.
children.
Can we
Please
come-
make no mistake about this. This is why I come.
Thank you.
Now, let me tell you something, miss.
Thank you, Dr.
I
Edwards.
know I ain't got but 3 minutes.
Okay.
But I had a written statement, all right? I didn't come here not thinking what I'm going to say. So please, don't be disrespectful to me. I won't disrespect you. Let me say what I have to say, because I'm a taxpayer and been in this community for 26 years.
All right, thank you.
So please don't do that.
Thank you.
We try to make a difference.
All right. You have anybody else?
The next speaker is Bernicia Carter. The next speaker is Reverend Mizell. Roberta James.
Good evening, members of the board. Hi, my name is Roberta James. I too am
Want to speak into the microphone?
a tax-paying citizen in Mount Vernon. I have a lot of nieces and nephews that attend the public school. As we are about to get a new administration in our city, we are also would like to get involved in the school board. So what we are asking, a whole bunch of us signed up, but some of them went to the city council. So I came to ask that you guys reconsider having your meetings on a different night of the week so that all of the citizens of Mount Vernon don't have to stand there and choose, that they can come to these meetings also. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. James.
Frida Hickson. Sherry James. Darcel Gaines. Kim Klotz. Stuart Hemby. Tom Keller.
And about here, they told us 7:30. All our people supposed to be here 7:30. Y'all, see, I don't know, to me, it's a game tonight. All the people we told to be here between 7:15 and 7:30.
Our meetings usually start at 6:30.
Told us that y'all have an executive session, y'all be, ain't nobody gonna sit around here while y'all go in the room. Y'all do what y'all have to do. That's why ain't nobody here.
All right, we apologize. All right,
Show that to your clerk.
okay. Next on the agenda are reports from the superintendent.
Good evening, all. This evening, I'd like to share, you can load up the PowerPoint, please, Oscar. This evening, I'd like to share a plan for Mount Vernon, a plan for the future. I entitled this evening's presentation, Planning Today for Tomorrow. Where there is no vision, the people will perish. And my goal this evening is to present to the board what was a summary of our previous meeting where we talked about my vision and our collective vision for Mount Vernon in years to come. And then later on, we will talk about a meeting that followed that, which was comprised of members of the board through the facilities committee, and hopefully get to the point tonight where we can synthesize these two plans, which aren't vastly different, frankly. Next slide, Oscar. So our vision for the future, our schools of excellence, Mount Vernon's new academic vision is to create enhanced educational programs with a rejuvenated school system through a district-wide pre-K early learning center, a full-day pre-K program, and I will talk about the whys in a subsequent slide. Creating and expanding a K-8 school configuration with the exception of our Turner campus. And the reason for that is when we looked at the capacity of those two buildings, neither building is sufficient to house all K-8 students. So that configuration would need to remain the same since we certainly don't need two K-8 schools on the same campus. Develop 3 or more high schools as centers of excellence incorporating the arts, science and technology, and a career and technology education program with an emphasis on IB studies and academic programming. And this effort must be supported with an infrastructure and upgrades to existing buildings district-wide, and to also improve and add where necessary athletic fields and play areas for our physical education program and our sports program. So my goal for this evening is to create a unified vision for the district in collaboration with the Board of Trustees to gain a clear direction for district architects to create a roadmap for our planning. My expectation is that at the end of this meeting, we'll be able to give our architects some direction and then do a formal presentation on our October 28th meeting, which would include the impact of what this kind of vision would be and to what extent we need to scale back if that is the direction the board chooses to go in. So the why. Why are we creating this vision for the district? Why is this, in my estimation, a necessary step? There's a moral imperative from my perspective that we begin to plan for the future for our district. We know that everything we know about early literacy tells us that in order to close achievement gaps, we need to get our students in our schools as soon as possible. And while half-day pre-K programs are certainly a step in the right direction, it does not help us close achievement gaps. In a conversation with Regent Johnson this morning, for example, we talked about what our high schools need, and our high schools do need rejuvenation all across the country. But more importantly, we can't start at our high school, particularly in communities where children may not necessarily come with all the necessary prerequisites to be successful students. We need the opportunity to have early childhood education programs, full day for all of our students. The K-8 school configuration has some benefit. The continuity of care and building relationships is related to research that tells us that when there is continuity of care, children simply do better. Those relationships help to alleviate some of the problems that middle schools across the country have been faced with as it relates to adolescent behavioral issues that sometimes impede successful educational experiences. And so why are we talking about schools of excellence? We're talking about schools of excellence because we need to raise rigor for our students, we need to restore excellence, and we need to create multiple pathways for students to gain entry into competitive colleges. Remember that when our students leave Mount Vernon, they are not just competing with children from Mount Vernon or New York. They are competing with children across the country and across the world. And as we look at national and international standards, we have to raise the bar because our children will not be able to compete on the pathway that we are on. Some youngsters may elect to go right into the workforce, and it's our responsibility as educators to make sure that we are creating pathways, not eliminating them, for students to be gainfully employed or to be college ready. And certainly providing quality instructional programs. This gets to professional development for our staff, monitoring the implementation of new strategies that we expect our teachers to have, and increasing our level of quality in our recruitment process so that we are attracting the best and brightest because they want to work in Mount Vernon. Our fields are important as well. We need to be able to increase the value of the district assets, number one, and that will certainly impact housing value. Now, of course, I'm often confronted with folks who I meet, and they say, well, I don't have kids in this district. Why should I support a school budget, or why should I vote for a school bond? And the fact of the matter is, a school bond or improving the quality of our schools has an impact on all of Mount Vernon, even if you don't have children in the district, because it increases the sellability of your home. We have to recognize that competitive sports create lots of opportunity for our students to gain access to scholarship funds that they would ordinarily not have. In order to do that, we have to have fields that are appropriate for competitive sports that will raise the bar and expectations for those youngsters as well. Curb appeal is important. When people ride through our community, the first thing they see is the school. They see our fields, they see what our schools look like, and they draw an opinion based on what they see, even before they get in the doors of our schools. So it is important that we recognize, as we talk about revitalizing our school district, that we have a responsibility to also revitalize the structure and address the years of neglect that have occurred as a result of funding. And certainly our district and community pride, recognizing that this plan is not just about the kids in our community, but the entire community. I believe that this plan, should it be implemented with fidelity, will increase school and district pride, and folks will be excited about being part of this, being a part of this community. So there are three parts to this proposal, if you will. One is the academic vision, which I've kind of outlined in broad terms, looking at the infrastructure that's necessary to accommodate that. So even in our buildings, for example, in some of our newer buildings, as we look at expanding them to conform with the K-8 configuration, we need to also think about what that project will look like in terms of creating state-of-the-art science labs so that our students have the benefit of having appropriate science education at the upper or middle level educational programs. And again, our fields are essential. And when these three are combined, what you ultimately will see is how this vision comes together to create a final academic vision with required supports and infrastructures and related athletic fields and play areas. Particularly when we talk about a full-day pre-K center and how important cognitive development is and physical development is for our young learners. So this is what it looks like in my initial presentation to the board, that we would create a full-day early childhood center, which would be located at the Parker site. Parker was selected because of the configuration of the facility there that would be able to accommodate traffic, buses, etc., for the number of parents, particularly for our young learners, who would choose to drive their children to school rather than place them on the bus. So Parker would be the ideal location, although when we look at our universe, there may be need for us to look at some other alternatives as well, which we'll talk about moving forward. In this configuration, Rebecca Turner would remain a K-5 configuration. Benjamin Turner would be a 6, 7, 8 configuration. Our other schools, which would include Graham, Holmes, Hamilton, Pennington, Trapp Hagen, Columbus, Williams, and Lincoln would be K-8. We would also have a K-8 program at Grimes, but that program would offer specialized learning opportunities for youngsters who had a particular interest in the arts, fine and performing arts. We selected Grimes for that because of its location its proximity to Thornton, which I'll talk about in a second, and the plant itself is actually very conducive to that kind of program. Then we would create 3 specialized high schools. A.B. Davis would be a STEAM program which would emphasize science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We would have Mount Vernon High School, which would be an expansion of our comprehensive program, including career and technology education and an emphasis on IB. And Thornton would be our fine and performing arts school, a true fine and performing arts school where students would have the opportunity to excel in the arts. It is also a facility in need of significant repair, but at its inception was considered to be a place where performing arts would thrive. Next slide, please. This just gives you a pictorial of what that looks like from an aerial view, so to speak, with the pre-K program, its location to the rest of our schools, what the K-8 configurations would look like, and in this proposal, Mandela would be offline, and those students, that building could potentially be leased out as a revenue-generating opportunity for the district, and those youngsters would be infused into a comprehensive program. Later presentations will show you some alternatives to that. You can keep going. So what I feel our field upgrades will look like. So our first field upgrade, you can advance past this one. Keep going. Okay. So our first view is Mount Vernon High School. This is an aerial view of Mount Vernon High School just to give you an idea of what that facility looks like. And then how the fields, next slide, how the fields would look. And so this kind of shows what the track field would look like, the football field, and baseball fields would look from an aerial view. The next slide shows a mock-up of a similar configuration and what we hope our fields will look like once they're done. This is a sample done in Briarcliff, which is similar to what we are proposing for Mount Vernon High School. This is a view of A.B. Davis, which you see is an enormous facility. And in the rear, you can see the field right now, which is in significant disrepair. This field is actually between A.B. Davis and Columbus School. And as we look at making this one of our schools of excellence, you can see how desperate that field is in need of revitalization. This is an aerial view of what the proposed renovation will look like, and the next slide gives you another pictorial of what that field could potentially look like once it is rehabbed. Now, these are just samples. These are not exact renderings of what our fields will look like, but samples that would help guide how these fields would be revitalized and updated. This is a view of Graham School, and at Graham School, there would be significant work that would occur around the campus in this proposal, and the next slide shows a sample of what that field would look like. There would be a play area for, you can go ahead. There would be an area outside the building that would be fenced off, and this would give us a sample of what that could potentially look like with the appropriate renovations. This view is Cecil Parker, and again, actually go to the next slide. I think that's a better illustration. This gives you a view of how large that land is there, and to the far left where you see the purple, adjacent to that is parking areas, and buses would have very easy access to and from that building. It's both entrances are on a two-way street, which would make it pretty easy for parents and buses to drop off and pick up students there. And these are just some sample drawings of what a pre-K playground area would look like, some samples that we would look to have installed in an area. Back up one slide, please. Where you see that purple area there, right there is where that play area would be installed. The blue area is the basketball court that was recently installed there, and that would remain intact, and the purple area would become our play area for our young learners. And the facilities committee made some modifications that I think make sense. In addition to having Parker as a pre-K program, that committee proposed that we look at not closing Mandela, but maintaining Mandela, and in fact acquiring the property that's adjacent to Mandela to create green space around the school, acquiring possible land at Pennington and creating a pre-K to 5 program there, and an additional facility to house our middle school students. And that has some promise there because it gives us an opportunity to think differently about how we could expand the programs throughout our district and create pre-K programs in other areas of the district so that children in our pre-K age grouping would not be traveling so far for their program. It also frees up some space. Parker, as it currently exists, would require that we still have some additional seats. We would not be able to accommodate all of our students in a full-day program, all of our students in our universe. And keep in mind, when we think about our pre-K program, we are talking about students by the time this was really implemented, students that are currently not even born yet. So we would need to think about planning, looking at our demographic study very closely to see what our birth rates would be for a 3 to 4 year period from now. This also shows that the 3 high schools will remain as I described previously. And I'm going to actually, if you don't mind, refer to Mr. Zamore, who actually helped facilitate this part of the suggested reconfigurations, in case I'm not doing the plan justice.
Actually, you've been doing a great job. Yeah, actually, you've been doing a fantastic job, and I have really not more to add to that.
Okay,
That's pretty
very good,
excellent.
very good. And so that's the grand view. And so what I'd like to do is engage the board in conversation about how we merge these 2 hours, these two visions. The significant difference between the two is that instead of one central location for full-day pre-K, there would be pre-K programs located on the south side of the community. And Pennington would be expanded to create an adjacent building to accommodate students from grades 6 through 8. That would also require that the board consider acquisition of additional property. Actually, in a meeting today, we discovered that there is enough property already in the Pennington area that we would not have to buy additional property. But that would, of course, have significant impact to the bond. And there is an opportunity for us to look at phasing all of this in. We don't need to do all of this all at once. And actually, I don't even know that it's advisable to consider doing all of this all at once. The other difference that this proposal includes is, of course, keeping the Mandela program intact as it is now. What I will say about Mandela as an alternative program is that if the board should decide that they want to move in the vein of keeping Mandela online, I think we need to really look at putting the parameters in place for youngsters who are candidates for the Mandela program so that they have a pathway to earn their way back into the general population or the general education programs. Now, there will be some students who are overaged and undercredited that may really need to remain in that kind of program. But my estimation is, as it is currently operating, there are youngsters there that I think may be not serviced as appropriately as they ought to be, and perhaps may have an opportunity to gain greater success if they were gradually mainstreamed back into the general programs.
I will want to could you leave that up just so we can see that? And I'm not sure how we want to break this down so we can stay organized. Do we want to start with the different sections, pre-K, and gradually work our way down to the bottom, or do we just want to get in where we fit in?
Speak your mind.
Yeah, I just think however you choose, sir.
As you was talking to Mandela, I think
gonna ask you to take
that's a major consideration. For one, because I also believe they do miss out on a lot of services that's offered within the main buildings. So I don't understand why we would not afford that opportunity. I would like to know. I know you made. I'm not sure if you made that suggestion as far as keeping man. You said yeah. You said Dr. Mrs. Moore. Why we would keep that building open when those students could benefit from other programs that we're creating at this current moment, like the CTA programs, which they can't benefit in a building like that because it doesn't have the space to hold those type of programs. Second is when we have an opportunity, as we spoke, to use Mandela possibly as a revenue stream and be able to bring back some of our special needs children, I believe that would take precedent, in a sense, over keeping the building over in order to somewhat, I don't want to use the word, but segregate those children as the problem children when that's not necessarily the case. I think they benefit by receiving programs that's offered in our general school. And then second, we benefit as a district, and our special needs students benefit as a district by being able to bring them back into district, so we will collect revenue, and our special needs children will be able to be closer to home instead of traveling, because a lot of you may or may not know, some of them travel extremely far to receive their services. So this would allow them to keep them closer to home, and it will also generate revenue for the district.